All right, thank you very much. Okay, Els, we got about 30 seconds, so you can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Now I have to remember how to do this. Does anyone know where the play button is? Because I don't.
It's the present button next to share on the top right.
Yeah, they made the call to action share, not present, top right.
Top right. Sorry, Sorry. Aha, found it. No, there. Sorry, it's like 7 p.m. here. I'm not fully awake, but that's fine. That's fine.
All right.
Okay. So, what is a VNRPG and why should I/you make one? By me. So, I'm Els. I am making a game called Retrace. A lot of people ask me what kind of game it is, and I didn't actually really have a good answer for this until about 3 months ago when someone suggested the term VNRPG to me. And then I was like, oh, yeah, that is what it is. So it is an adventure game in where you walk around on a 2D plane, and it has the narrative style of a VN, thus making it a VNRPG. So, what is a VNRPG? It is similar to old school point and click adventure games, but instead of using point and click mechanics, it's more like essentially Undertale control scheme is what I usually refer to people with. It's got, so you navigate with the arrow keys or WASD and interact with buttons. There's no real strict definition, but you can generally expect to find dialogue boxes and sprite portraits, typical of VNs, some kind of puzzle-based gameplay, possibly with action elements. The RPG comes usually from RPG Maker, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's an engine that was used to make a lot of the early stuff before we had things like Unity and Game Maker and RenPy. And there's usually a strong focus on character development and narrative over perhaps more gameplay and action-based focuses. I have made a very handy little graphic for all of you to illustrate my point. So the clearest form of VNRPG is Corpse Party. That is sort of an OG VNRPG. Danganronpa is one as well, definitely, although its action gameplay is a little more out there, a little more creative. Stardew Valley, I think, is an interesting one because it has the dialogue boxes and the character focus, but with more of a different take on the gameplay, which I thought was cool. And then, you just get out. I went a little bit wild with some of those. So, should I make a VNRPG? Obviously, I can't actually answer that for you, so the title of my talk was a little bit misleading. But it really depends on what you want to achieve with your game, your budget, your time, all of that. So, pros of a VNRPG. It is much easier to appeal to a broader audience. I'm sure a lot of you who've made VNs before know that it can be a little hard to get non-VN playing people to understand them. I have definitely run into this before, where people have played a VN that I've made and have just clicked through all the text and told me there's too much text. So that's frustrating. You also get a little bit more flexibility in your narrative design, so you can go for some sort of interactions between gameplay and narrative and visual storytelling, cutscenes, things where you can allow the player to have a little more freedom in what they interact with rather than just boxes, essentially, choice boxes, which is it's a lot of fun. You get a lot more design choices. There is one big con, which is this. I believe we call this dev hell. It's a lot. I am not the best programmer in the world. I don't know what the average programming level of the VN community is, but I imagine it is quite a big, it's a step up from working with Renpai and what is essentially quite simple things to things like AI and movement and physics. And it's a lot. So you really have to weigh up your time, your budget. I was able to hire a programmer to help me with a lot of things, which definitely helped. But it's definitely a huge time sink. So it's really obviously you learn a lot, which is really good. You can sort of develop skills if you want to get into different types of game development, but that's something you have to consider. There are a lot of good resources around, which I'll get into in a second. But yeah, so there are ways to make it easier, but it definitely, there's also things like, obviously now you have to have backgrounds and sprites that walk around and animate and all sorts of things that you have to spend money on that you wouldn't necessarily in a traditional VN. Engines. I'll go through this very quickly because obviously there's a lot. RPG Maker is the OG. You can make some really great games in RPG Maker. I don't know how many of you know Jada Zavarise, who is making a sort of a VNRPG style game called Selling Sunlight in RPG Maker, and it looks incredible, and you would not guess it was RPG Maker. There's a lot of things already built in that you can use with it, but the actual dialogue can be kind of a pain, and it has a price point. Game Maker Studio is what I'm using. It's good for 2D games. It's quite lightweight. The free version is okay, but you're probably going to want to drop the $30 on the pro version if you seriously want to use it. And obviously, it doesn't translate to other game development positions as well as learning how to use Unity or Unreal. I don't like Unity, but a lot of people do. So I have to put it in here. It's definitely a good option. I just personally don't like it. So I'm not going to talk about it. And Unreal is like Unity. It's obvious. Basically, it's Unity's less popular little brother. I believe Gary, who we had earlier, used Unreal, so you could talk to him about it. Yeah, pretty much that's that. Some tips. A lot of you will know this already, but start small. You're going to want to put a lot of things in that you think are going to be very easy. They're not. Just keep it simple to start out with. Do not start writing your dialogue before you have figured out how you are going to get it to display in the game. That is a free tip that I'm giving to all of you. Please keep that in mind. And try to be creative. Think about what interesting mechanics you could use in your VNs that aren't just choice-based. And obviously, genres, maybe don't make a horror game. There are a lot. I'm making one, so I can't really talk, but, get creative. And I didn't time that at all, but questions, if anyone has any.
Guys have any questions in there? I'll see if I can read any off.
I'm sorry, I talk really fast because I'm nervous.
That's fine. It just means more time for questions.
Yes, you can.
There's no escape from this, so it's totally cool. Hold on. There's so many comments about like Unity and Unreal right now that
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Gary actually mentioned that to me that I shouldn't have brought up engines, but it was too late by that point.
It's fine. Okay, someone asked, what's the gameplay for your current game?
Yeah, I should have put a screenshot in probably, but I didn't think of that. It is basically you walk around and interact with things. If you've ever played, if you've played Undertale, it's similar to that without the battle system. There's puzzles and there's a sort of a zero escape type mechanic where once you die, you go back and your character and the game remembers what you did so that you can you can go through different timelines and make different decisions, and like you already know how the puzzle works and something like that.
Somewhere is someone asked, would you consider making a VNRPG using RenPy?
I think it's definitely doable. I mean, anything's doable if you put your mind to it. I think DDLC was a RenPy, wasn't it? And they did some interesting stuff. Like that's, yeah, I think you could. I think it would depend what kind of mechanics you wanted to put into it. I think making a full like walk around game might be difficult, but anything's possible if you put your mind to it.
Someone's asking, have you used GameMaker before? How easy is it compared to other engines?
This was my first time using GameMaker, although I started 3 years ago, so I guess. It's quite, I like it because it's not as complicated to start out with as Unity. It's not quite as overwhelming. It's got a good community behind it, which is nice. There's a lot of resources out there. And for me personally, I have trouble with 3D stuff. So if you're like me and have trouble with 3D, it's just 2D, and that makes it a little easier to visualize.
Okay, someone's asked, do you think there's a particular genre other than horror that would work well for VNRPGs?
That's a good question. I mean, romance, I guess, is the obvious one. See, now I'm showing my ignorance of genres because my brain immediately went sci-fi, but there's kind of sci-fi and horror go hand in hand so often. I'd like to see something really off the wall, like a farming game or like magic or something. Or a mystery detective game. That's a good one.
Yeah, mysteries would be fine for that. Let's see. What are your thoughts on a VM with inventory trading mechanics?
It's hard to start out with. Jada, my friend Jada, selling Sunlight person, is actually doing that at the moment. I think it would be very cool. Coding inventories is kind of a pain. If you understand things like data structures and stuff, it's probably less of a pain. I think it would be cool. I think it would be very interesting. Yes, I think it would be difficult, but cool. Sorry, is my mic cutting? Oh, it's either my mic or possibly I live under a plane thingy, so it's possible that like something's.
You're fine on my side, so it could just be like a networky issue. So
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Let's see here. Some questions. Oh god, there's so many questions. What are your thoughts on mini games or small mechanical diversions that are different from the main VN dialogue-based decision making?
I think they're really cool. I think it's definitely a good way to break up the dialogue and the sort of choices. I think it's obviously, I mean, if it's got nothing to do with the rest of the game, that's a bit silly. But things like, again, bringing up DDLC, I thought that was handled really well. Yes, VNConf is a VNRPG. I will accept that. Yeah, I think mini games are cool. You do have to, if it's something like an action thing or something that requires skill, a lot of people who play VNs are perhaps playing it because, or not because, but maybe aren't expecting to need to do skill or timing or something. So you do need to perhaps have a difficulty setting or think about that.
Cool. I think we have time for one last one. Python wrote, given the table that included things like Breath of the Wild, what does not count as a VNRPG?
Yeah, someone in the chat said, is a sandwich a hot dog or is a hot dog a sandwich? Yeah, that was me being very silly. Obviously, Breath of the Wild is not a VNRPG. It just isn't. The thing with game genres is that it's very easy to say, oh, this is something, and just define it however you want. So I think I'm going to stick by it. I want to say it doesn't involve 3D, but you could probably make one in 3D. I guess Yeah, I guess ZTG would count into that. Yeah, I wouldn't say Breath of the Wild is. That's definitely the focus of that is the action, whereas in a VNRPG, I think the focus has to be on the dialogue and the choices and all of that.
Cool. And so I think that brings me to end of time, so I can give it to Flo, but we can continue with the questions in chat because there were a lot that I couldn't read. But thank you very
guys.
much. Yay.
Thank you.